Hello, everybody, and welcome to HJ and Modern Barber Goes Live. Today, I'm joined by Polly Rose, and we're going to be discussing what is conscious leadership. So, Polly was thrown into a salon leadership position at the age of 18 and had to learn on the job. From her 35 years of experience in the industry, it's safe to say that Polly has learned a lot, namely that a kind leader gets much better results. Polly says, being kind does not make you weak. On the contrary, it takes a strong person to lead with kindness. I cannot wait to find out more. Welcome, Polly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so good. So I'd love to find out a little bit about your hairdressing background and your hairdressing career that got you into the position of being a kind leader.
Well, I accidentally fell into hairdressing, and it's over 35 years ago. And honestly, it's an industry that I loved from day one, and an industry that I'm still really proud to be a part of. So yes, together with my husband, Colin, we have had several salons over the years, all in the Cotswolds. And although I have also trained as a barber and I'm always helping out in the salon, my role within the business has predominantly been the business and the HR side.
Oh, amazing. So how did you come into that leadership role at age 18 that we kind of spoke about in the introduction? And what kind of thoughts were going into your head when you were 18? Because I don't know, me at 18, trying to manage people and lead people, I'd be like, ooh, imposter syndrome. And
Yeah.
did you have any kind of reactions from your team being a leader at such a young age?
Well, I think, to be honest, I didn't really know what I was going into. We were very young when Colin, my husband, bought his first salon. And, we literally were thrown into salon leadership.
Yeah.
I had no experience whatsoever at all. But my father, he was a manager. And I can remember he always told us that if you want people to give their best, you have to treat them well and earn their respect. And bless him, he demonstrated this throughout his whole life. So I knew no other way. And I think Colin, he behaved the same. So it just was not in either of our interest or our nature, I suppose, to be anything other than kind and to encourage. And we had a very young team, and basically I think we just learnt together. And we were often told by other salon owners who were more experienced than us, you're too soft, you need to get tougher. But we could just see that this behaviour towards their employees just didn't work, and they had a high turnover of staff. Morale was low in the salon, and so we just sort of continued doing it our way. And here we are many years later and a few salons later, and yeah, I suppose a few mistakes later, definitely.
But all worked out in the end in terms of keeping
Yeah.
staff loyal and happy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a great team now, but we've had great staff throughout. Yeah. We've been very lucky, very lucky.
So the phrase conscious leadership might be one
Mhm.
that people may or may not have heard of before. What
Mm.
what is the ethos around that phrase, and why specifically does it work so well in your opinion?
Well, I think the ethos is to be fully self aware of how you behave as a leader, and recognizing that your people, they are your greatest asset, and that your behavior as a leader has a profound effect on the lives of those who work with you,
Yeah.
and not just their lives but the lives of their family. um,
They're all
it's
connected, for sure.
Yeah, it absolutely, what happens at work goes home, you know. So, but not only that, you know, it influences everything. It influences the client's experience, it influences the relationship you have with your suppliers. You know, it is your job to create a culture of trust, of care, and learning. And it works because I think if your team feel cared for, if they feel valued and fulfilled, then they will be motivated to go on to achieve their highest potential, which, you know, yes, benefits them, but it also benefits your business too.
Absolutely. Like the last thing you want is for your team to be resentful about, a holiday or a half day that they couldn't take, and then that impacts their mood that they bring to the salon.
Mm,
That creates an
mm,
atmosphere. I mean, as a client,
absolutely.
I can 100% tell when I go into a salon who has a happy team that
Mm,
feels nurtured and like listened to, as
yeah,
opposed to one that they're just like
yeah,
almost numbers working, and how
yeah,
many haircuts they're doing in a day.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It, you know, it just shines through when the team are happy.
And they'll go the extra mile.
Mm,
You'll get more out of it.
absolutely. They certainly will. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
And why right now in a post-pandemic world does this topic seem most relevant?
Well, you know, it's been such a tough year for our industry and those that work in it. You know, we've had a lot of time off, and, you know, this has had an effect on all our mental health and our well-being. And many have lost confidence and, you know, they were sort of anxious about coming back. So again, you know, as a leader, it's our job to care, to reassure, to encourage, and, you know, most importantly, listen,
Yeah.
so we can help them, you know, readjust to being back at work and to feel safe and to feel valued.
There must be a lot of pressure from being a leader during this time as well to I guess you want to present a face to your staff that is assured, and not to tell them about all the little worries that are waking you up in the
Mm,
middle of the night.
mm.
Um, I know this isn't a question that we talked about before, but I'd love, do you have any insight into that? Do you have an opinion on whether you should almost hold back on some things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're very honest with our team and very open with them, and we include them in a lot of our decision making. So, but yes, there comes a point, I think, where they don't need to be worried about, you know, things that are really going on
Yeah.
behind the scenes, you know. So yeah, it's a fine line really. With, you know, you need to be honest with them, but equally you don't want them to be worried,
Yeah. Like a good a
you
balance.
know, on things that they just can't help you with, you know. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think we just lost you there for a second, but I think we're back. We're good.
Good,
Um,
good.
so next question is, be really great if you could kind of outline some examples of unconscious leadership. So times when it's a kind of leadership example that's not gone well, and why it's so damaging to team morale.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. Leaders are often scared of showing vulnerability because they believe that they'll be taken advantage of. So instead, they often lead in a defensive way with the sort of the barriers up. And this often then leads to, like you said before, a toxic salon culture. And in my opinion, I think there is a difference between managers and leaders. A manager manages people for their own success, and a leader genuinely cares for the people that they have the privilege to lead. And I think as managers, they think that they hold the power. They think they're wiser, they think they're smarter, and so can tell people what to do. So this then obviously gives their employees no voice and no pride in what they do. And therefore, they feel disengaged and they only do what's expected of them. And to be honest, when a better opportunity comes along, they're off. So, yeah, it's getting that thought, that I'm a leader, I need to, encourage people and listen to them and, be there for them, because they are the most important part of our business.
Yeah, I guess you were saying the power doesn't lie with the leader, it
No,
lies with the people, because
definitely.
they're the work literal force that keeps the business going.
Absolutely. They really are. They're absolutely paramount to the business. So you have to look after them. And especially if you want to keep them.
Yeah. Do you think that you could kind of take us through some topics where 6 topics that salon leaders who lead consciously do? I know there is something on your website and the
Yeah.
information you sent over that was super helpful, and it'd be great to run through that now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a list of things that we need to
Yeah.
do and to be a conscious leader. But I think one of the most important things is to look inward, to be self-aware. Look at how you lead. Show your team that it's okay to be vulnerable and fearful. And as leaders, we face fear every day. So encourage your team to show up with open hearts and demonstrate to them that defensive behavior is not welcome or necessary. So that's, I think, the first thing. Look at yourself, look what your leadership style is. And then I think as a leader, we need to listen deeply, and we need to not judge, but we need to try and understand, and you have to have tough conversations. And often I find what they say is different to what they actually mean. So as a leader, you have to get behind what they've been saying to you. So yeah, you just have to connect to your people, and I think listening is a fine way to do that. So yeah, and then I think I talk about building a culture in which every member of the team feels respected, empowered, and appreciated, not just for what they do, but for who they are. We all have our own unique stories, which makes us who we are. So, as a leader, we should recognize this and build a culture of inclusion that honors and celebrates diversity, because we are a diverse group of people. So what else? A big one for me, a really big one, is expressing gratitude. If somebody does good work or positive behavior, then we should express gratitude for that. And I feel that a consistent stream of acknowledgement and gratitude from your leader and also the people you work with, it improves performance, it drives engagement, and it inspires better work, and it builds trust. And I think if you can build that trust, then if you have to have a conversation then that's negative, it's not great feedback, then they find that helpful rather than threatening.
Yeah.
And so I just think that recognition, and if it's aligned to the salon's values, then it only serves to reinforce those values too. So for me, and recognition that is spontaneous is memorable. So don't wait for the annual appraisal to do it. It's the unexpected recognition. And because it's unexpected, it magnifies its impact. So big one for me, recognition and gratitude. Yeah, absolutely vital.
Can I just ask if specific ways that you would show gratitude? Would it be monetary? Is it verbal? Is it just a cute little bottle of prosecco
Yeah.
now and again?
Well, Yeah, it can be anything. I mean, for me, verbal is really important, and you do it in front of other people,
Yeah.
so it has a greater impact on everybody in the team. Monetary presents, gifts, yeah, absolutely. But you've got to look at how that's going to work, because that obviously can cause issues so yes, absolutely. I mean, we always like to treat our staff, but we try and do that more as a group.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to, but you just have to be a little bit careful when you start giving gifts out and things. But for me, I think for most people, just to be recognised, with somebody coming up to you and saying, that was good, what you did today was brilliant, didn't you all think, I think that works really well. So I wouldn't rule it out, and I don't rule it out, but you just have to think that through, how you're going to do that.
Yeah, I can totally see.
Mm.
Might be the case.
Yeah.
Did you have any more topics that you wanted to chat
So
about?
I'm just trying to think. I'm just having a quick look at my
I'm
note.
sorry, I interrupted.
And yeah, sorry, you wish you never started me on this one. So another one, darling, is criticising young people.
Yeah.
I hear salon owners so often say they're not loyal or engaged. I'm not investing in young people because they'll probably leave after 6 months. You know, I think as leaders, we have to ask, what are we playing in this? These young people who come into hairdressing from school, they're committed to a career in hairdressing, and they're keen and they're creative, and they could go on to be great hairdressers or even icons in our industry, but their dreams are thwarted by the way that they are treated by their employers. They don't get the training they were promised, and they're not paid a decent salary. So, they leave and they're totally disheartened by our industry, and, well, basically never to return. So, as an industry, I think we need to acknowledge this. They are our future, and without them, we won't have a hairdressing industry.
That's really important. No,
Mm.
and I
It
feel like that's
really is, and it's something we really do need to work hard on. Yeah.
uh,
And then I think probably we'll leave it for the last one for today, I think is, and we talked about it earlier, is to talk about a better work-life balance. But you actually cannot separate what's going on in work from what's going on outside of work. They are inextricably linked in our hearts and our minds. My husband comes home from work, and the first thing I say is, how was your day? So you cannot and you should not expect your employees to separate their professional life from their personal life, because both impact on each other. Um, and I feel that if we share our ups and downs with our colleagues, it gives us a better understanding. It builds relationships, trust, and engagement. And, you know, our job and our lives, they have to work in harmony with each other.
yeah, that's a really good point. I feel really I really strongly agree with that, Polly.
Mm.
Would you find it difficult to manage someone that didn't to lead someone, sorry, not using the term manage,
Yeah, no.
someone that didn't give you kind of insight into what was going on with them personally? I mean, not stepping over any boundaries, but
Mm.
just being putting up a wall, basically.
Yeah, yeah, it happens. And very often that behavior is because of fear. They fear somebody or something. That could be in work, it could be in their home life. But if it is impacting on their work or on their relationships within the salon, then there has to be a conversation. And I think the first thing, there are people that are toxic, or whatever you want to call them, and I think you have to sit them down and explain to them that their behavior is not acceptable, it won't be tolerated. but equally ask them, what's going on? What's causing you to behave like this? And hopefully they might not want to tell you the whole story, but hopefully you'll get an insight to what's going on, in their life, either in or out of the salon. And then, of course, I think the next question is, well, how do we fix this? How do we move forward? And I think once you've done that, you've opened, the conversation, the discussion, and hopefully you can just move on and work through it together.
Amazing. So can you kind of touch upon how leadership approaches have changed, hopefully for the better, from the 80s and the 90s up until the present day?
Yes, because a lot of your listeners won't have a clue what it was like in the 80s and the 90s. So, yeah, I mean, I think in the 80s and 90s, we were led by or we led by, or we didn't, but, it was all about power and muscle. We saw a rise in selfishness. It was about money and not lives. We put profit before people. And, often it meant laying off people to make more profit. And that's what they did. Then I think we moved on to sort of leading with the head and creating systems and standards that, all must adhere to provide great customer service, reach targets and raise productivity. And so now, hopefully, I believe that we're now realizing that leading with the heart produces the best results, and employees actually thrive in a caring workplace.
That's very cool. I do hope for that to be across the board in different industries and stuff, which
Yeah, it is. It is across all business, but it's happening, and it's fascinating, and it's great to see, And I think as a hairdressing industry, I want us to be at the forefront of kindness in the workplace.
And taking kind of inspiration from other businesses, are there any leadership books or authors that you recommend that advocate for leading with kindness?
There are so many, really. It's absolutely brimming with material out there. A great book that I read, and it's not related to hairdressing, it is related to business, but absolutely loved it, was called Making Work Human, and it was by Eric Mosley and Derek Irvine. It's about HR departments, and they're now concluding that human connection is far more important than data collection. And a great book for anybody who's interested. And Work Like a Woman, Mary Portas, she calls for a system where everybody in work, wherever they work, everybody can reach their full potential. So again, another great book. Leaders Eat Laughs by Simon Sinek, that explains how or why some teams pull together and others don't. So another great read. There's just so much out there. Podcasts, loads. So just look at conscious leadership and you'll find loads of material. Yeah.
I love how passionate and animated you were, even more so when I got onto the topic of books and other leadership.
Yeah, I do my fair share, I have to say. I just love this topic. It absolutely fascinates me, but I know it works, and it's not that difficult. We just need to be honest and open and respectful, and the transformation can be amazing in a team.
That's cool. And we've got some lovely comments and feedback from our viewers today. So Fern rightly states, when you're gracious, people are attracted to you, which I think is a
absolutely
lovely. And Mina sadly has a story to share of poor treatment in one of the salons that she's worked in, and She says, I was very badly treated at the last salon I was in, and the owner basically told me to get out because I sat down after doing a 10-hour shift. I was traumatized from it, and that's such
Mm,
a sad
yeah.
thing to hear.
Mm. It's really sad, and I'd love to say that, you know, that story is very unusual, but unfortunately I can't sit here and say that, because, you know, you only have to go on social media and have a look at the accounts that are set up for people who feel they've been mistreated by their salon owner, boss, leader, whatever. Yeah, very sad, and we've got work to do as an industry, but, you know, we can do it.
It's such a physically brutal role as well as mentally challenging. So with the level of shift numbers and
Absolutely.
hours and stuff, it bears repeating, doesn't it, to
Mm.
lead with kindness, because I guess
Absolutely.
a lot of leaders maybe haven't they were quite far away from doing those intensive shifts on your feet,
Mm.
being on with a client all day.
Mm.
So maybe it's just forgetting that, everyone has been in that position and needs to remind
Mm.
themselves how hard
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
think that you've got a leadership book in you, Polly? One that
Oh gosh, I don't know. I love working with people. I love working one to one.
yeah,
You know, maybe one day, but yeah, you know, I love doing things like this. If I can help anybody to you know, treat their staff with the respect, and you know, if they're struggling, you know, I say it's easy, but you know, it depends really how you were treated when you were a stylist, you know, or you know, so you often learn from the people that, you know, employed you. So it may be that it's the only way you know how, but you know, there is another way, and I love helping people do that. Yeah, see that.
and where can people get in touch with you? How can they contact you if they'd like to find out more about your coaching or consultations that you
Yeah.
offer?
Okay. So I have a website. It's Grace Salon Leadership, all one word, .co.uk, and also an Instagram account at Grace Salon Leadership. So yeah,
Also,
I'd love to hear from people.
also great salon leadership. I feel like your
Well,
Freudian slip worked.
yeah, it certainly was. Yeah.
Oh, it's been so lovely speaking to you, Polly.
Yeah.
I think that might be a lovely place to end it on. And thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, for your comments. And if you do watch this at a later stage today, when you get back in from work, perhaps feel free to comment, and myself and Polly will be checking the comments and hopefully get them answered for you. It's been amazing. Thank you so much
No,
for your time.
no. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I really
You're
appreciate it. It's been
welcome.
great.
Have a great day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.